So my name is Derek Johnson, and this video is going to be exploring themes of adolescent experience, looking specifically at the lived experience of time, place, body, and human relationships. One way that we can start to explore these themes is through the Edmodo conversations that we've had with students from Cali, Colombia. One of the first things we can observe from the post to the right here is lived place. The place that we're specifically looking at for this person is San Andreas, which is right near Colombia. And they also state how it's their favorite place because of its beauty and the spectacular sea. And then they start to get into the human relationships of it, which tie very closely into space with their family, friends. She even mentions the people that are there and how they're kind and helpful. For place, water seems to be a very key thing, which we can see is from the pictures of the water. And when you can enjoy something like that, you tend to have a better experience there. The next post we'll look at also focuses very heavily on place. We're talking about this place, another place in Colombia. They talk about how it's wonderful and calm. Calm seems to be a very key thing, so that way you are comfortable and you can relax. Moderate temperatures, another thing, so it's not too hot nor too cold. The idea of comfort is very, very prevalent. In order to describe certain things, these things as great or extensive. And then they even get into how the village is small but very special. So even if it's smaller, and it doesn't have to be these big extravagant things, which we can see in the pictures down below of the place. We can also see the prevalence of water once again that connects to the last post. And we can even see the really heavy tie between place and human relationship again, where we get into the people, how they're very nice, and they take pleasure in receiving thousands of tourists all year round. So we see these two really coincide, where adolescents really take mind into the place, and if they can establish even better human relationships at this place, it becomes more and more special to them. This next post, we can really get into the lived body, where we can see you're making your mark as you're there. So one of the things that I would emphasize is how they can write on the walls with your name and crayons right on the big paper, so you can leave your mark there, like you have a mark that you're leaving there that's going to matter in the future. And even with relationships, like you're eating with your friends, and you can see be there with friends or family, seeing as it's a restaurant, and the place, like, it's relaxing, and it's the beautiful landscape once again that allows you to establish these types of human relationships where you are. And live time is a big one with this as well, because you're leaving your mark as you draw things on the paper with crayons, and you can see the meaning of wanting to leave a mark where you're at. So through our conversations with Edmodo, we can really conclude that there's heavy ties between place and human relationships. Specifically, if you can have a good relationship with the people there, you have a better relationship with the place. This can also be seen where the importance of family gets tied in, so even traveling or being with them, whether it's at the restaurant or so on and so forth. And in Colombia, from the conversations we've learned, that they live with their family often until they get married off, and then they move out of the house, which is opposite from us here in the States. Leaving a mark where you are is important to almost any adolescent. That can be seen through the restaurant, where you get to draw on things. You've made your mark that you're there, and you can almost stand the test of time with you. Also, taking pictures is another way. Calmness of an area is very important, where you can just relax and be there. So that's a really important tie to the place, and even like with your body of being calm and relaxed. And water also seems to be a recurring theme, where if it's near water, you often see there's a heavier tie there.
Besides just the Edmodo conversations, reading Life of Pi also has a lot of these same themes. Lived place is very prevalent, as it takes place in his home place of India, and it also takes place a lot on the sea and on a boat, and then later in a hospital. His homeland really helps define who he is, because it initially sets him up with the religion of Hinduism, which also starts to tie into his family. His family owns a zoo, so being in that place allows him to establish these certain styles of relationships and ultimately become closer to animals, and that's kind of how we see things through, which we'll see later. Lived body was also very prevalent, where with the religions that he establishes himself under, where he establishes his identity, he meets with a Catholic, he's originally Hindu, he meets with a Buddhist, and he kind of comes up with his own identity through each of these and ultimately helps shape how he sees the world and how he views himself within the world. The boat also has very prevalent themes with the body, where you see him trapped and he doesn't know what to do. In each story that he tells from the boat, you get to really see how he's been shaped to do the isolation that the boat offers. Along with lived body on the boat, we also see a lot of lived place. The boat shapes who he is from the isolation of it. Also, there's the boat before it crashes with his family on it that ultimately shapes how he starts to feel towards others. The human relationships within this novel are very prevalent to defining who Pi is and how adolescents ultimately grow up. There's him and the tiger, who are often seen at odds with each other. It's kind of like a warring thing going on. There's him and the chef in his alternate version of the story, where he's very, very brutal, and it really brings to light his relationship with his mother, what really shows that he truly does care most about family. And the animals in the zoo, even his relationships with those, really shape what he connects to. And we ultimately see that he is the tiger, which is very important to understanding that he ultimately becomes almost a savage because of where he is on the boat and related that to place, not just into the human relationships of everything. We also see a lot of lived time within this novel, where we experience the hospital in the end, where the time that he spends there is ultimately trying to figure out what has just happened and him trying to cope with it by ultimately coming up with these two stories. One of what actually happened that involved the tiger and all these high fantasy elements so we can cope with it, and the other one where he's just this brutal person that ultimately kills the chef and has to resort to cannibalism to survive, which we ultimately see with his experiences on the boat and that isolation that takes place in his caring towards his mother. The sea ultimately almost drives him mad, where we see these various almost sores appear on him, and it's really deteriorating at him physically and emotionally with that isolation, just being able to see all of this around him. Speak is a novel that we had to read for class that focuses on Melinda, who's an adolescent, and also these themes have a very prevalent effect on her life. Lived place, first she's very alienated, so she finds this closet where she can truly try to find herself and just have her own alone time. And also within the art room, she gets this place as well where she really has this freedom to express herself and almost make her mark, which goes back into the idea of time too. The relationships, her friends ultimately basically abandon her, and she has to try to form all these new relationships, which she very much struggles with. Mr. Freeman is a relationship that truly matters to her, because as an adult he highly influences her and lets her truly find a way to be herself, whether it's the project through her, or of her discovering herself, which can be seen on the cover of the use of the trees, where it's trying to show how she's growing and she grows more and more within her art. Within time, we also see how slow days often go for her. She's often very, very depressed and very sad, and she's trying to figure everything out. And this is from the alienation of the other students that they forced down upon her when she ended up accidentally busting a party, essentially, for actions that she was trying to stop. Within lived body, the most prevalent piece would be anything with art. Art for her is a way to express herself and flank her markings. So if you visit something like an art museum like these, they're from the Andy Warhol Museum, where you can really get these existential experiences of trying to figure out who you are, and as an adolescent, your identity is very important to you. Community by Dan Harmon is another show that really looks at all of these themes. While not every character is an adolescent, we ultimately get all of these themes being present. When we look at our adolescent characters, we have Annie, Troy, and Abed, who are ultimately each trying to discover themselves. The whole group is relating to a certain place, which is their study table in the library, which they made a lot of memories, and that's where their relationships are formed. They draw on the study table. They've almost destroyed the room. We see each kind of establishing their own little thing, which can be seen how Annie's always trying to learn. Troy always gets perceived as awesome and is almost childish, who's also childish along with Abed. Chang is trying to get into the group, and his identity is kind of unknown throughout the time. We see the teacher. We see Dreff trying to form these relationships, which he's always been very, very bad at. Shirley's trying to figure out what she needs to do in order to write her life. We even see Britta trying to figure out everything that's going on. All of these themes are very prevalent, whether it's tying them into the place, which is their study table in the library, or all the relationships that they're forming with one another. It's very, very prevalent. So ultimately, the ties between place and human relationships are very, very close to each other. If you can establish relationships in a place, then they become all the more meaningful, which can really be seen in the Edmodo posts. Water is really prevalent, and being able to be in a place that is beautiful really allows you to establish who you are there and really connect to it. Being able to create that timelessness is also very, very important, whether it's drawing on a table in a restaurant you're at, or just being able to create art in general, like in Speak. Family and friends are very, very prevalent in every case. To adolescents, these relationships ultimately mean the most. They're who's there for you, and so on and so forth. And with time, depending on who you're with, where you're at, and everything around that, it depends on how fast or slow time passes and how we experience that as well.